same thing.
We'll call this meeting to order. This is a special session of the Breezy Points City Council. The date is February 5th, and it is 4 o'clock. This special meeting has been called to consider termination of an employee. You have before you in the packet a memo that kind of outlines and gives a history of as to what we are dealing with. We're here to discuss and take action on the consideration of terminating a specific employee that has lost his commercial driver's license due to a DWI. A little history: the employee was an introductory employee, about 6 months tenure with the city, and he's also a veteran of the military, which puts him under Veterans Preference Act and Minnesota Statute Section 197.46. Previously in closed session, we discussed and we had requested as a preference resignation and 160-hour severance payment. That was declined. As you know, veterans preference involves a period and option to call a hearing. A 60-day period is involved with this. Joe has put together various options. The first option is, which we had discussed previously, is a discharge, which starts the 60-day clock running, and that would start the 60-day clock running for his veterans preference rights. The second option, which basically is an extended severance, where we were offering a resignation with a 30-day severance. This would extend the severance to 60 days. And it is essentially an expansion of the previous offer that we had on the table. Two other options that we have added since we have previously considered. The third option that we would be looking at would be placing the employee on unpaid leave during an investigatory suspension until we can understand what the courts might do in this case. This would delay any final action that the council actually can take, and would not start the clock on the veterans preference. This does have some drawbacks in that it is somewhat open-ended, in that there is no time limit imposed on this investigatory suspension. The fourth option is the process of veterans preference to be used during that period of time. And while that time is going on, having a limited work scope, which the employee would be doing some work and while the court process moves forward. This is not really a desired option, but it is being brought forward as something that we could consider. This is kind of a summary. Joe, do you want to add anything at this point, or okay? So at this time, I will open it up to discussion, and we will start with the representatives of the Personnel Committee. Councilman Maroney, can you? I would like to hear your position and your thought on this topic.
it's an unfortunate situation, but we do have an employee that no longer has a CDL, which at the time that the personnel committee had posted this position, we withdrew candidates that did not have the qualifications of a CDL. So at this time, without the current employee holding the CDL, unfortunately they become unqualified for this position. So I'd move to I don't know which way I want to go right now, but unfortunately we'll have to go along the discharge process.
Okay, so your opinion would be that we would go with, continue on with option one?
Yes.
Okay.
We could, with the potential of option two.
Councilman Schmidt?
The CDL was obviously the focal point of the discussion of the previous meeting, and it is a requirement of the position, and we are in a difficult position if we don't have a person with the CDL license. And as I understand, the rest of Joe's memo, the difficult part comes down to the reinstatement process. Even if the charges were dropped, there's no guarantee, as I understand it, that the CDL would be reinstated. That's strictly a state, that's a separate deal, as I understand. Is that right, Kevin?
Correct.
And it would be up to the state and a judge to determine if the CDL would be reinstated. So we would be really on a bunch of ball bearings, trying to figure out, where we're going to be in any period of time. And I just don't know how far along we can go with this thing. I would think, I don't know. This is a tough one, like I told you last meeting. I just really, I just don't like being here. I understand the veteran's preference. There's a little different wrinkle here than what I was assuming, reading that section of the law. I thought the person actually had to be discharged, but he only has to be notified that he's going to be
He
discharged?
isn't technically discharged until he gets notice, or veteran's preference. Excuse me. He has to get notice of discharge. That starts the clock, and he isn't technically discharged until after the veterans board meets, makes their decision.
I know we also discussed about, the option of if the person is in fact going to be discharged. Of course, we don't know that, I guess, until after after the hearing, Joe, as I understand it.
Correct.
If the employee opts for the hearing, that could draw it out even further.
A little while, yes.
No, like I said, it's a tough call. I guess if we could all look down the road and see what's going to happen in the future, it would be a little bit easier to make that call. But not being able to do that, I really think we have to move on. I'd like to be able to find some way to develop an amicable process of departure, as it were. That's all I have.
So what I'm looking for is preferences on options. And
Well-
I'm just looking for preferences right now.
Okay, the preference I would have would be to attempt to negotiate something with the employee and for a severance.
So you'd be looking at option two as the
Yeah.
primary. And fallback?
Well, as I understand it, he's indicated a preference for the veteran's preference, and that I would assume would be my fallback position.
That'd be option one.
Option one. Okay. Councilman Williams.
Yeah, it's a very sad situation. But I would go with those two options, the 1 and 2. But I mean, to get to 1, you have to try 2 first. And because I think there's also an effect on the rest of our employees and what kind of message we're putting out to the public and the other employees if we don't act.
Okay. Councilman Bakken.
Mr. Mayor, I need some clarification if I might
Yes.
not get that
That's
from
why
the
we're asking these questions.
from the administrator. Number one, have these options, the new spin, as this second one indicates, has been offered to the employee?
The employee has gotten this information yesterday and had an opportunity to review it, but we have not discussed it.
So he's seen it, is my question.
He has seen it, that's correct.
Are we going to get an opportunity, or is he going to get an opportunity to talk today?
The answer is yes.
Will we have an opportunity, Mr. Mayor, to ask him some questions?
Yes.
I'll reserve my judgment until
I
after
want to hear your options.
option 1 and 2.
Option one and
With,
two.
we reserve the right to clarify that also.
Okay. These are just, what I'm looking for here is, we have basically 4 options that we're looking at. And obviously, what I'm trying to get out here is nobody has any preference for option 3 or 4. So we're saying, go right back to options 1 and 2 as the only ones that we would be considering on the table at this time. Okay. At this time, Brian, if you would like to come to the microphone and have anything, say anything, and be open to questions, that's your prerogative.
Brian Murda. I don't have anything else to say. I think I said it in the first meeting enough, so if you have any other questions, I'm here to answer.
Again, Councilman Maroney, do you have any questions for Brian?
I have no questions.
Councilman Schmidt?
Brian, you've looked at the information that we received, and I'm assuming you must have some opinion.
I looked at it yesterday afternoon, and like I said, I just read through it, but yeah, I haven't decided yet on, I wanted to see what the options that the council was considering.
Do you understand you listened to what the council members had to
Yes.
say? Do you understand where we're coming from on this whole issue with the CDL?
Yes.
Okay. I might just point out my concern about the option with the veterans' preference is that this could end up being a long, dragged-out kind of situation. There would be legal costs. Every time I turn around and I look and the city gets involved in something with legal costs associated to it, it just seems like money poured down the rat hole, and I don't want to go there, frankly. But if that's the only choice we have, then I guess that's the only choice we have. But I would prefer to work something out with the employee that would allow him to perhaps find some other employment and take care of his family in the interim. I do have a problem, though, with, again, paying an individual in this situation. I know we would have an option. I would think, Joe, if I might just speculate on this, that's option 2 is a negotiation process. We would probably be able to discuss something if the person was interested at all in coming to work and doing some task or whatever during that period of time. I don't know. It's something we'd have to talk about, I guess.
You looking for an answer?
No, I don't. I'll just say there aren't any good ones.
Anything else?
No.
Councilman Williams?
I don't have a question for Brian, but I kind of have one for Joe, I think. Well, I mean, he has a period of time to digest this and think about it. So how much time does he have to do that? And while he's doing that, if we're doing with option 2, is he still being paid, or can he be unpaid? Can he be on a suspension without pay while he decides?
Until we get to the point of consideration, yes, it could be once we start the clock and veteran preference, yes.
Or if he decides to do this 60 days, 320-hour severance package? Or how does that work?
Well, if you negotiate something out from him, we'll just figure out what it is and put that together and have some kind of agreement, and you continue to get paid or lump sum or however.
So while he has time to digest this and consider, he could be on unpaid leave? Okay.
Councilman Bakken?
Well, Otto asked the question that was first and foremost in my mind. You have read these 4?
Briefly, yes.
Briefly.
We had them yesterday.
Yesterday, exactly. And I heard you say you've made no decision one way or the other there.
Correct.
Okay. Veterans Preference Act is a very serious document, gentlemen, and Councilman Williams, very serious. I happen to be a Vietnam vet, and it carries a great deal of weight. And anybody that's not cognizant of that, it's a fact. But I too would like to see the city come to a reasonable agreement with Mr. Murda. And that's all I really have to say, other than we'll see what develops.
Okay. So, that's all, Ryan. Thank you. Now it's decision time. We have 2 options that we're looking at. Option 1 would be to initiate discharge, and option 1 is to initiate the discharge. Option 2 is to go with a negotiated settlement and resignation. I will entertain a motion at this point as to which option we choose to proceed.
I'll try flying a motion out there. I'd make a motion that we direct the administrator to pursue an agreement under the option 2. And would a week be a reasonable amount of time? You know, I've put a time limit in there, and then have that be unpaid leave during that time of whatever deliberations or sort of negotiations take place. But I'd like some direction from you, Joe, on a time frame. And then if no agreement is reached, we'd go to 1.
Well, I think 1 week time frame is probably adequate.
Okay.
If you're trying to get something worked out. Okay, there's 2 pieces to that motion.
The motion would be that pursue a negotiated
Settlement.
parting of the ways for 1, and have a week to accomplish that if it can. While that's unpaid leave, if you don't accomplish any sort of agreement, in 1 week, the notice of discharge.
Okay, in terms of this settlement, I can certainly negotiate something, but the council's got to agree.
Right, and that's, I wanted some clarification on your motion.
Well, go
That
with
is
what is-
talking about the 60-day,
Right, because
Severance
we
package.
had before did 30.
right. Okay, so just to paraphrase your option, you're looking for, or your motion, you're moving for option 2 with a 1-week deadline, and that would be as described in the memo.
Yes.
And then, and the expiration of the 1-week timeline, then we would go to, we would issue the notice of discharge and pursue option 1.
That is my motion, well, and it's unpaid leave while that negotiation is going on. Unpaid
Okay.
suspension or whatever it would be.
Okay? Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it for clarification.
Okay.
Dan, was with your initial motion, are you doing 60 days as a lump sum, 60 days with benefits, 60 days without benefits?
Well, I guess that needed to be clarified, wouldn't it? There could be an amendment to the motion.
Well, let's,
If I may, can I throw out a suggestion, Mr. Mayor?
yes.
What I was going to move a motion for is very similar along Diane's lines. Put the employee on 7 days, up to 7 days of unpaid leave, with directing staff to negotiate 60 days of a severance package with benefits. And that would be for mutual departure from the city. If not accepted, then we move for the discharge filing.
Okay, so
60 days with benefits. So.
if you want to withdraw your motion, and we'll rephrase it as per.
Okay, I'll second his motion, and I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay, the original motion has been withdrawn. Commissioner Maroney, if you would restate that motion
Yes.
again.
So at this point, we would put the employee on an unpaid leave of absence for up to 7 days, at that which time staff will be to negotiate with the employee for 60 days, a severance package of 60 days paid with benefits. If they do not accept that, or the time lapse of 7 days expires, we will then move forward with the 60-day discharge, Veterans Preference Act.
Okay, is there a second? And
I
you
second.
seconded that motion. Okay, discussion. I'll go to you first, Commissioner Maroney.
I think, I want to put 7 days out there. I know it's a lot to consider. I mean, the circumstances are not easy. So I wanted to give time to allow for consideration for staff to work with the employee. And I think regardless if we go down the Veterans Preference Act or we can come up to a mutual agreement, I think that 60 days with benefits of what we're going to plan on playing it out anyway, most likely. So hopefully this can be a happy ending. It's a severance package.
Okay.
Move on.
Councilman Williams, anything else to add?
No, it's still unfortunate, but I think
Yeah.
it's the way to go. I think it's fair.
Councilman Schmidt?
Brian, do you understand what's before the council? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Councilman Buchan?
Just a clarification, all the legalese here, it gets to be a little bit convoluted, but it's my understanding that if he doesn't accept this, then it automatically goes to the 60-day or the Veterans Preference Act. I understand now. Yes, sir.
Okay.
I understand.
So the motion on the floor is to go essentially with option 2, and we'd be starting a 7-day unpaid leave clock for the decision to be made, and which time we would be offering up a resignation offer and 60 days severance with benefits. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion is carried. There is no other business on the agenda. This meeting is closed.